On today's show, Evan Mobley for Giannis. Who says no in a deal like that one? We'll talk about that, plus some other big moves the Cavs could make this offseason on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name's Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. And if you're watching the show on YouTube as we get started here, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There have been a number of speculatory trades, fake trade things that have been thrown out over the last several days, and this episode is going to focus on a lot of them. I put out the ask for, any questions that you might have, and this is part one of what's probably going to be a 3-part mailbag to wrap up this week and just kind of put a bow on what was the 2024-2025 season for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I've got a ton of questions. You guys were great on YouTube, on Reddit, on Twitter, via email. A lot of really great questions. Going to do my best to try and answer all of them over the course of the next 90 minutes of content. So we're going to get started right now. And we are going to get started with, I believe this was an email from Josh Kratz, where he asked, I was just wondering if you think the Cavs have any chance in the Giannis sweepstakes, assuming he asks for a trade. So that has obviously been something that has been thrown around a lot over the past week or so. I believe Bill Simmons brought it up on his podcast that, Evan Mobley for Giannis, who says no, right? We've all seen that clip that's been circulating, or maybe we've listened to that podcast after we got done listening to Locked On Cavs that day. I think that this is a very interesting topic. I think it's a very interesting conversation to have. I think Giannis is on the very, very short list of guys who I would trade Evan Mobley for. It's not a long list. Like, you look at it, I would trade him for Giannis. I would trade him for Nikola Jokic. I would trade him for Luka Doncic. But it's not a very long list of players that I would rather have for the foreseeable future than Evan Mobley. I think that highly of Mobley. And I went into this year thinking, Evan's probably going to be an all-NBA player a couple times in his career. And then seeing the leap that he made from last year to this year makes me feel as if he has multiple first-team all-NBA honors, I guess we'll call it, in his future. And that he's somebody that is perennially just going to be one of the 15 best players. I think moving forward on an individual basis for Evan, him not being an all-NBA player means he didn't have a successful regular season. Now, he, like the rest of the Cavs, are going to be judged on postseasons, and that's what's going to matter. But that just speaks to the caliber of player that I think Evan Mobley is, that I think the league kind of thinks where Evan Mobley is going. Of the teams that you have seen primarily connected to the potential Giannis sweepstakes, and of course, Giannis needs to ask for a trade before any of this happens too. The Milwaukee Bucks, I don't believe, are going to just trade Giannis without him saying, hey, I would like to be traded, because you don't do that with that kind of a player. He is not the same caliber of player, in my opinion, that LeBron was. But could you have imagined the Cavs trading LeBron in 2009 because he wasn't signed long-term and didn't ask to be traded? Of course not. So I don't think the Bucks are going to just trade him without him asking to be traded. Giannis for Evan is very complicated because of where these two teams sit financially. The Cavs are going to be a very, very expensive team next year and the year after that at the very least. And because of that, it complicates the way they can do things in trades. They have to, when they're operating as a second apron team, which as of right now they are, they cannot combine salaries to make money work. Now, Evan going to be making $46 million a year. So he's got, a lot of money tied up. Like his contract is very, very big, which means you can trade him for almost anybody in the NBA. That makes sense. He's one of the highest paid players in the league after what he did this year to earn Defensive Player of the Year. And obviously, I do think will be named All NBA. So he is somebody that makes a lot of money. Now, Giannis makes more than him. In the 2025-2026 season, Giannis is estimated, I believe, to be making $54 million. That is more than the $46 million. So how do you get there if you are the Cavs? Well, it would also mean that in order to combine salaries, the result of this trade would have to mean that the Cavs are not a second apron team. So they would have to trade for Giannis and cut a significant amount of money in that deal in order to get under the second apron. In order to do that, then they would be hard capped at the second apron. They would not be allowed to be a second apron team. So if they were to trade for Giannis, it would not just be Evan for Giannis straight up. One, I think the Milwaukee Bucks would probably want some draft picks, which the Cavs don't have to give, other than I believe their 2031 pick. Two, you would have to add more salary to it. And three, you would have to add so much more salary to it, probably bring in a third team, that you get below the second apron and get below it far enough to where then you can still fill out the rest of your roster. So if that were the case, you're looking at a roster basically of Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Giannis Antetokounmpo, which you're not going to find a better three-person group in the league than that three. Those three plus maybe DeAndre Hunter or Max Strus, and then a bunch of guys that are on minimum contracts because you really can't afford to do anything else. Now, that's not who the Cavs would be forever, but that's who they would have to be next year. And that's not, in my opinion, that is not enough depth, which I do think we've seen matters a lot. That's not enough depth to go out and win a title next year. Now, the year after, they could do some reshaping of the roster. And that's typically when you see these teams be able to build a little bit more. But I think that in a vacuum, would you trade Evan Mobley for Giannis? Yes, you would. Giannis is a better player. I don't know that Evan is going to be a multi-time MVP. Giannis has been. Giannis is still playing at an MVP level, even though he's 30. Like, he's still playing at that level. He's still a great, great basketball player. And I don't know that Evan will ever be as good as Giannis is right now. Even if it shortens your window, it probably increases the chances that you win a title in the next 2 years, even if like 5 years from now, the chances of that are lower than they are right now. And that's a trade that I think you do have to be willing to make. But I don't think that the Cavs are going to be involved in this. I'd be very, very surprised because it gets very, very complicated. And truthfully, I think one of the other things that we have to look at when we're talking about Giannis is he's going to get sent, maybe not exactly where he wants to go, but I think he's got so much equity in Milwaukee that he's going to be able to give the Bucks a list and say, hey, I would like to go to this team, or this team. And the Bucks are going to be able to find a deal amongst those three teams that works for them. Or Giannis might be able to just say, hey, I only want to play for Team X. Has he done enough in Milwaukee to earn that right? I think so. Now, you can't necessarily always operate your franchise like that. Like, that's not the best thing for it. And, we have seen guys do this, and guys that you would think maybe had built up that type of credibility in a certain place and then not get, or equity maybe is a better word for it, and then not get sent where they want to. Damian Lillard comes to mind. Like, when he asked out of Portland, he wanted to go to Miami, and now we're talking about him as a member of the Milwaukee Bucks, and that's part of the reason why Giannis Antetokounmpo might be available via trade this summer. So these things all do have to be accounted for, but I would be very, very surprised if Giannis gets to naming teams where he would want to play, and Cleveland is on that list. I think when you look at it, there are going to be bigger markets, because that's how these things work. it's very rare. And listen, I love Cleveland. I'm from here, but it's rare that that a guy who asks for a trade puts Cleveland on the list. It does not happen. It's not something that happens historically. When's the last time you saw it? Really doesn't happen. Even Donovan Mitchell, I don't know that he ever provided the Utah Jazz a list. I don't think he ever actually demanded or requested a trade, but I don't think Cleveland would have been on that list. You do have to, I think, take that gamble when you are a franchise like the Cavaliers in a market like Cleveland. Very clearly has paid off with Donovan Mitchell, because I think that a lot of him wants to be here for the rest of his career. But I think that the Giannis thing is just very, very, very unlikely, even if it is something that I would do in a vacuum. And then I want to get to one more Giannis thing here before I move on to another subject. But Titus Kelly emails and asks, do you think that a roster constructed based on Donovan, Evan, and Giannis would work? If so, what's the best trade to get us there while also keeping us in for the future? That would be an incredible triumvirate of players. But there is no trade that the Cavs could make that the Milwaukee Bucks would say yes to that would send Giannis to Cleveland while Evan Mobley is still on the Cavs roster. And they should not. Because the Cavs don't have picks, they would have to provide the best player available on the market, which would be Evan Mobley. Again, do not expect this to happen. Would be stunned if it did. But there is no world in which Evan Mobley, Giannis, and Donovan Mitchell are all on the same roster next year. If to get to the second part, if Milwaukee just says, you know what, we love Darius Garland and Jared Allen more than anybody else, is there it doesn't matter what the rest of that trade would look like. You are set up for the future because you have 3 of the, 10 best at worst. Probably less than that players in the East on your roster. Giannis is the best player in the East. Donovan Mitchell has been a top 10 player in the NBA since he's been on the Cavs. Evan Mobley is going to finish second team all NBA, saying he had a top 10 season this year and is only getting better. There's not a better group of players in the league than what that would be. I just don't think that is something that can happen. Okay, so we've talked about the Giannis trade. I don't think that's going to happen in Cleveland, but could other pieces be on the move for the Cavs? We'll talk about what those could be, what those trades could look like. A couple that you guys threw at me. We'll see what I feel about those. We're going to do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Skims. We're going to talk about my underwear because when I found out that Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about the quality from friends, family, advertisements like this one. I thought there's no way it's that good. I mean, I know they make good products, but for men, really? And then I tried it. I was blown away. I have never been happier with my underwear than I am right now because Skims truly does make the best underwear for men. It lives up to the hype and then some. I have worn a lot of different brands of underwear. I've pretty much stuck to the same style of underwear, but I've worn a lot of different brands throughout my life, and I've tried different materials, and I've never been somebody that's been able to find the perfect fit until I found Skims. It's comfortable, it's breathable, it doesn't bunch up on the sides. Everything you're looking for in underwear, at least I think you should be looking for in underwear, Skims has it. So if you want to be happier with your underwear the way I am with mine, head on over to Skims and shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. That is SKIMS.com/LockedOnNBA and in Skims stores. Plus, let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey. Select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Plus, Skims, the official underwear partner of the NBA, WNBA, and USA Basketball. If those folks are wearing it, you know it's got to be good. So again, shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. That is skims.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. The next trade question that we're going to get to comes from Mysterious Key 6831 on Reddit. How would you feel about a Garland for Franz or Franz Wagner or Jalen Suggs package? How would you feel about moving Allen and letting Mobley be the full-time 5 and run 5-out lineup? So obviously this is a 2-for-1 question. There's a lot going on here. I would not trade Darius Garland to the Orlando Magic. If I'm Kobe Altman, I would not do that. Now, maybe I am somebody who is higher on Darius Garland, the basketball player, higher on his upside than most. I still hold, I think, a lot of stock in Darius Garland. I think that he is a potential third-team All-NBA guy. And I think before he started getting hurt in late February this year, he was playing like somebody who was at the very least going to warrant consideration to be on an All-NBA team. And I would suspect that he gets votes as an All-NBA player this year. I don't think he's going to make it, but I would suspect that he's going to have at least a few third-team All-NBA votes when that voting does come out. I would not trade him toward the Orlando Magic. I get what you're saying in terms of like adding some toughness with Jalen Suggs, who also has struggled to stay healthy. Franz Wagner, very good player. Orlando needs a point guard very badly. I think it would be a bad idea to give one of the best point guards in the East to a team that's got some other really good talent. Like I think Paolo Banchero is a really, really good player. I think the Orlando Magic are going to be a very good team. I think they would have been probably potentially a home court team. Like, could they have finished with a better record than the Pacers this year had they stay healthy? I think that's possible. Could they have finished third in the East? Could they have won 52 games this year? Had Paolo not missed so much time and had Franz Wagner not missed so much time and Jalen Suggs not missed, 50% of the season? I don't think that's crazy to think. So if you take a look at the bones of that team, which I think are very good, and you add an all-star point guard to it, the Magic become, I think, so much better because their offense is terrible. Like the thing the Magic need is exactly Darius Garland. If I'm the Cavs, I would not want to aid a team in my own conference by giving them exactly what they need. I think Garland is a better fit in Orlando than Suggs or Wagner is in Cleveland. And I think that in order to trade an all-star to a conference competitor that is on the rise, while that all-star is still 25 years old, I think you need to win that trade significantly. And I don't think that the Cavs do in this situation. So I would feel pretty poorly about that deal. Not because any of the guys that you suggested are not good basketball players, but I think that helps out a competitor in an imbalanced way to the way that it might help out the Cavs. And then the other question, how would you feel about moving Allen and letting Mobley be the full-time 5 and run 5 out lineups? So I think those are actually two different questions, because I do think Jared Allen should be the name that we look at. If the Cavs are going to make a significant change, I think Jared Allen is good enough to be considered significant, but I don't think he, as I mentioned the other day, I don't think he is somebody that should be considered to be part of the core anymore. I think he's significant, but I don't think it's a core 4. I think it's a big 3. I hate that term, but I think it's a big 3 and not a core 4. I would be looking into Jared Allen trades this offseason. I would be. I think that the Cavs can be better. I think that having a center that's not an all-star next to Evan Mobley would be a good thing. Now, 5 out lineups full time, I don't know about. Like, that is a thing where I think Evan should be playing more center than he did this year. But I don't think he should only be playing center. And I've brought up this situation a bunch where the 2020 LA Lakers, Anthony Davis was their center. He didn't start games at center. Dwight Howard did. JaVale McGee did. Anthony Davis was their power forward, but it was easy to shift him to center when they needed him to play center. I think seeing more of that with Evan could be a really good thing for the Cavs. So I would look into trading Jared Allen. I would listen. I'm not going to just trade him to trade him, though. Like, you do have to get something of significance back. Like, it does need to be something that you look at and say, yeah, that is a move that improves the Cavs. I don't think that this is not some addition by subtraction type of thing. I do think that Mobley playing more center would open things up, but I also don't think that he should be playing 35 minutes of center per night in the playoffs. I think he should be, like, when the playoffs arrive, he should probably be playing 35 to 37 minutes, and probably 28 of those should be playing center, because I think that's when the Cavs are at their best. A lot of their numbers this year said when Evan Mobley plays center, that is when this team really destroyed other teams. And I think we need to see a little bit more of that in the postseason. I think this could be a way to do it, but playing him at center full time throughout the course of the regular season is just not something I think he's physically ready for. And it's not something as if you look at and say, yeah, like he's not ready for this. It's more so, do you want to, it's, I think, much more physically taxing. And you don't want to do that to Evan. It doesn't make sense to do that to Evan. But I think having him play a little bit more center probably would be a direction that I think the Cavs should go, and I think makes sense for the Cavs to go. Okay, so the Cavs are going to deal with some financial restrictions. Talked about them a little bit after Kobe Altman spoke, but we're going to talk about the second apron and what that exactly means next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by CarGurus. Shopping for a car should be exciting, not exhausting, but between the confusing prices and hidden fees, it can feel overwhelming. That's why CarGurus is the place to go. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. With over 4 million listings, CarGurus has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the U.S. They verify dealers, provide a real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second-guessing yourself. You need a deal that you can trust. Well, CarGurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. Plus, the best feature, that, of course, would be the price drop alert. So you know exactly when the perfect car is available for your budget. And the in-depth vehicle details give you the peace of mind before stepping onto any lot. So buy or sell your next car today with CarGurus at CarGurus.com. Go to CarGurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That is CarGurus.com, CarGurus.com, CarGurus.com. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show on YouTube. But if you're watching right now, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. The second apron, something the Cavs, I believe, are going to have to deal with this season. And a Reddit user whose name I cannot say asks, with the second apron looming next year, what are the chances the Cavs make a move to try and avoid it for another year? I think these are pretty slim. The Cavs are going to be very expensive. As things stand right now, they have 11 players under contract for next year. That includes Dean Wade, who $2 million of his $6 million are non-guaranteed. So $4 million of his contract is guaranteed for next year. The remainder of it will guarantee in January. Craig Porter Jr., whose contract is not guaranteed, and Chuma Okeke, who the Cavs have a team option on. So if you include all those, they're over the second apron. If you don't include all those, I believe they're still over the second apron. They're going to be very expensive. I think that after listening to what Kobe Altman had to say, this is a team that we should prepare to see in the second apron, probably for the next 2 years, if I had to bet. I think after that second year is when things start to get really heavy in terms of the penalties that become more than just financial penalties. When you talk about having a draft pick frozen and stuff like that, I think the Cavs would probably like to avoid that stuff, but that's a bridge to cross when we get to it. I don't think that they're going to try and duck under that second apron for this year. If they want to run it back, there's no way of avoiding it. I could see them making some cost-cutting moves on the edges. Like if they want to retain Ty Jerome, that probably comes at the cost of Isaac Okoro. Like you're probably going to have to trade Isaac Okoro to get his money off the books in order to keep Ty Jerome on this roster, or maybe Dean Wade. But I think that somebody that's making significant money elsewhere is going to need to go, and the Cavs are going to need to get a little bit cheaper. But I don't think that they're going to be in a spot where they're going to be able to even duck out of the second apron. It's who they're going to be, unless they make a big trade, as I detailed in the first segment with the Giannis stuff. Unless they were to do something like that they need to combine salaries on, they get better, and they get under the second apron with that trade, that's kind of the only way I see them getting under it, because I don't think that they're going to get under it without getting better in doing so. Just like this past year, the Cavs felt they got better by making the Karis LeVert and George Niang trade for DeAndre Hunter, an added benefit was it got them under the tax. They were not going to make a deal that got them under the tax just to get under the tax. I don't think they were going to salary dump George Niang or Karis LeVert or anybody else for that matter that saved them tax dollars. They were willing to pay the tax, but the fact that that deal got them under the tax was a pretty big added benefit for them, but that was not the main driving force. I think the second apron you can probably look at in a pretty similar light as what that deal was last year. It's just at very different financial points. And then last one for today's show, given the second apron restrictions, who do you think would be a more likely trade piece, Garland or Allen from Fungible 1944? I believe this is on Twitter. I think Jarrett Allen is the more likely piece to be dealt. And I don't think it has anything to do with necessarily the apron or the restrictions. I just think from a basketball standpoint, that's how you have to look at things. There's overlap between Allen and Mobley. There's overlap between Garland and Mitchell, but I think it's easier to deal with overlap in the backcourt than it is the front court. And I think that in order to see Evan Mobley reach his peak, reach his ceiling, get to all that potential that I think everybody agrees that he has, I do think playing center a little bit more often is something that should be in the cards for him. I think that being able to pull that lever more frequently would be a really good thing for the Cavs. And I just think ultimately too, I don't have questions about Jarrett Allen's physical toughness. I don't think that you can be physically weak and play in all 82 games of a regular season. I think the injury he dealt with last year was a very significant injury, and I don't think the Cavs did him favors by listing him as questionable while dealing with the rib injury that he had. But I do question whether or not he's a playoff player. Like, is he a guy you want on your roster for 82 games? Absolutely. Is he a guy you want on your roster for the playoffs? I'm not so sure about that. I feel much better about having Evan Mobley on the roster for the playoffs. I feel much better about having Darius Garland on the roster for the playoffs. I think Darius, everything from Darius that we've seen says this guy should be good in the playoffs. The fact that he's been good in clutch, the fact that he's such a good shooter, he's such a good ball handler, like the playoffs should be built for Darius Garland. He's not been able to stay healthy during these moments. That's a big deal. Like, if he can stay healthy, I've got more faith in Darius Garland getting to that point than I do Jarrett Allen. And truthfully, I think Darius Garland is a star level player. I don't feel the same about Jarrett Allen. I think Jarrett Allen is a really, really high level role player, and there's no shame in that. It doesn't mean he's not a good basketball player. He is. He's terrific, but he's not a perennial all-star type of talent. Darius Garland is. And I think those guys are much, much harder to find. And yeah, I think you probably get more back in a trade for Darius Garland, but I don't know that you need to necessarily think about maximizing value for guys right now so much as you do need to maximizing fit on this roster. And I just don't think that trading Darius Garland is something that should be in the cards for the Cavs this year, but I can't say the same about Jarrett Allen. But thank you for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen. Thank you for making it your first listen every single day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. This was day one of what I believe is going to be a 3-day mailbag. Tomorrow's episode going to focus a little bit more on internal growth. We're going to talk about where Evan Mobley can take steps forward, what life should look like for him next year after Kobe Altman had a lot to say. Really, I think a lot is going to be on Evan Mobley's shoulders next season. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk about Darius Garland, where he can get better, and some other tweaks along the rotation. We're going to get to that in tomorrow's episode. If you're watching on YouTube as we get out of here too, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.